Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll pick up where Ms. Schakowsky left off. Given that you have about 25% of the world's fresh water close by, I can promise you that we in the Deep South will be coming for your water one day, and I just want to prepare folks for that. I also want to ask Mr. Cass the easy yes or no question. I actually have two for you. If Ms. Schakowsky is able to wrangle up some dollars from anywhere on the ideological spectrum to help you do your research, are you willing to accept those dollars?
I have no role in fundraising at the Institute, so you'd have to ask them.
Then I'll ask the opposite question. Does the quality of your research vary based on where the funding for the Institute comes from?
No.
I tell you, I've been incredibly pleased, Mr. Chairman, with this hearing. I did not expect to come and be inspired, but I really have been. Dr. Shang, it was your testimony about managing the climate, managing the Earth as an asset that got me started in the right place, because I think that's something we can agree on up and down the ideological spectrum. We all understand managing assets, and managing assets doesn't mean there's a foregone conclusion of where we're going to go. It just means we're going to try to maximize that ability. Dr. Hayhoe, for you to say it's not about preservation of the species, it's about preservation of the civilization. There is a quality of life here that we're operating on too. I think there's just so much that we can agree on. I put back up Mr. Cass's chart here because I do have a complicated time sorting through which facts are the facts and which facts are the angle. Does anybody disagree with what he has put on the board here to say that the research is projecting that Pittsburgh is going to have 12 deaths per 100,000 because of extreme heat, but Phoenix today only has 0.17? Does anybody disagree with those conclusions?
In a careful review of Orrin Cass's earlier work, we were unable to confirm these numbers.
But I mean, we're talking about orders of magnitude here. That yes, if I look at the numbers on the right, I'm incredibly frightened. But when I look at the numbers on the left, I'm incredibly comforted. That there should be some sort of agreed upon metric. Now, you don't have to agree it's 12.8 instead of 12.7. But is double digits right on the one hand and fractional digits right on the other? Again, if we can agree on that foundationally, it just seems that it offers us a different place to have a conversation.
I think the three bars on the left do not come from a peer-reviewed analysis, and in fact, I have no idea where they came from, and we were unable to confirm them when we tried to understand what Orrin Cass did in his earlier calculations.
Mr. Cass, sure.
Yes. In my paper that I assume he was referring, it cites specifically to the website at EPA that provides a downloadable spreadsheet from which those numbers come. And could I also add that the 2017 version of the EPA study actually provides a map that shows these numbers in circles, and you can go straight to the EPA study and find the map that shows in the year 2000, those are the values, and in the year 2100, those are the values.
Well, I would just share with you this whole conversation about adaptation. It's the first time I've heard it from a witness panel. Generally, my chairman accepted. When we call witnesses, we sometimes get the most extreme views on both sides, and the opportunity for conversation is eroded. But yes, I'm not talking about stopping everything I'm doing today. We are going to continue to progress. Let me ask about nuclear energy for a moment, because carbon is our baseline. We're getting ready to move an energy and water appropriations bill to the floor of the House. It contains zero money for licensing Yucca Mountain. As you know, that's a political issue. We've spent billions out there. This isn't to open it. This is just to license it, to finish the studies. If we opened it today, it would be full because we have so much nuclear material across the country that needs to be stored. Is it the position of folks at the desk? Do we have a position in terms of addressing climate change on supporting nuclear energy and thus providing safe storage? Dr. Hayhoe, do we have a position?
There is not a formal position among climate scientists, but I can tell you for sure that it doesn't produce carbon pollution.
We used to be the largest coal-burning state in the nation. We're on our way to being having more solar generation and more nuclear generation than any other place. But I need that all of the above strategy to work with. I appreciated what you said about renewables, in terms of forestry too. In Georgia, trees are crops just like corn and cotton are. You don't clear cut your land and leave it there. You manage it. You cut it once, you cut it again, you replant, you do all of those things to be a good steward of the land that you love. But the EPA has grappled with that. The European Union is grappling with where to continue that. Is it an agreed upon, settled conversation here in the States that biomass is in fact carbon neutral?
It depends on how it is grown. If more energy is putting into growing it than burning it, no.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you've been generous. I thank you very much. And I thank you all for the conversation today. Because we do have such a learned panel here, is there anyone here who believes we should be setting climate policy based on anybody's last tweet that goes out the door? Is Twitter the best foundation for good climate policy that we have? I really am grateful that you all are here. I wanted to ask the audience that's behind you, though. You all are protected. You're in the circle of trust here on the Budget Committee, but also the camera is facing this way instead of that way, so you will not be on the hook for anything that you do. But I just wanted to get a show of hands. We talked about the urgency of climate change. Who feels the urgency that is here today? All right. They let the record reflect that's a lot of hands, Mr. Chairman. They put those hands down. We've also talked a lot about nuclear today, most recently with the gentleman from Tennessee. How many folks think that part of our strategy going forward is going to include nuclear energy? All right, fewer hands, but still a lot of hands. I was with one of my Democratic colleagues the other day, and she said, "Rob, we're never going to do a big public works project like the Hoover Dam again because you Republicans just refuse to pay for it." And I said to her, "No, I'm happy to pay for it, but you refuse to give me the permits to build it." How many folks, we still have some hydro opportunities here, but we haven't built major hydro projects in a long time because of environmental concerns. How many folks would say that expanded hydro is part of our pathway forward? I've got many fewer hands this time around. You all might not have seen all the urgency hands that went up, but I have a tough time in this business of compromise that is Washington, D.C., melding the urgency with the, oh, but we can't do it that way. And no, that shouldn't be part of the solution. Dr. Shung, you said your opposition to nuclear was that the economics weren't there as they should be, but you expressed great faith in the free market. If we moved to a carbon tax, my concern is we don't take our thumb off the rest of the scale. We would continue to have laws that disadvantage hydro. We would continue to have laws that disadvantaged nuclear. In your vision of a carbon tax that would immediately bring the market forces to bear to solve the problem, would you see a repeal of all of the other laws that put their thumbs on the scale of what the outcome of energy choice should be?
I think whether or not we put a price on carbon is unrelated to whether or not we do or do not choose to change any other policies in the market. But just to clarify my earlier statement, I have no particular opposition or support for nuclear power. All I was stating is that the price has, relative to other energy sources, been rising, and so the investments seem to have a declining rate of return over time. That's all.
Let me ask you, Mr. Gomez, because I know you can't talk policy, but you're absolutely right about federal exposure. I certainly think of that as something that would bring us together on both sides of the aisle. In fact, on the Budget Committee 4 terms ago, we tried to begin budgeting for disasters, saying let's look back over the last 3 years of disasters and put that amount of money, the average, aside for next year. We do a terrible job of budgeting for disaster. Does your examination of that lead you to any conclusions why, again, should be a shared value? We've struggled to better budget for tomorrow.
So we make recommendations to agencies, right, to improve and to get more information. So we have some recommendations outstanding exactly to that point. So we've recommended that the Office of Management and Budget, for example, in their funding reports that they provide to Congress, provide information to you all on those programs that face growing fiscal exposure. So then you can then make trade-offs as you look at the information to see what to focus on, both in the short term and the long term.
There's not a single serious problem up here that I've seen solved without trust amongst folks. And sometimes I show up at hearings that erode that trust, and sometimes I show up at hearings, much more rarely, that build that trust. Going back to your closing statement, Mr. Cass, there are those things that are not helpful when folks ignore the world around us. And there are also those things that are not helpful when folks seek to scare the dickens out of us. I can go down a laundry list of public policy decisions that can be framed in exactly that way. I just want to thank you all. I do believe, Mr. Chairman, while we have virtually zero jurisdiction in this space outside of what Mr. Gomez has come here to try to get us to focus on, I do not believe there will be another hearing on this topic that has as much opportunity to provide a pathway forward among folks who still continue to have substantial policy disagreements. And I thank you all for the role you play in that. I yield back.